Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, June the 7th, 2024. Today I want to talk about India. There have been elections in India in which the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi has apparently lost his majority. He thought he was going to do really well in these elections. I mean, he's still in power, but his grip on power is maybe not as strong as it used to be because he is going to have to apparently rely on allies. So he can't entirely rely on his own party, the BJP. So I wanted to look at that. I also wanted to look at India in general, look at the horoscope of India, look at some people in Indian history, for example, the Nehru dynasty. So Nehru was India's first prime minister, and that dynasty is kind of a bit like the Kennedys. You know, they've had their tragedies. You know, his daughter Indira Gandhi was assassinated. His grandson Indira Gandhi's two of her sons died. One was killed in a plane accident. The other was assassinated, and so you know there is a certain instability there, or maybe the Nehru dynasty is something of the past. So there's still the latest Nehru, who is Rahul Gandhi, who stood in the elections. He has a party. His party did okay, but it's certainly not like it was a few decades ago. But I'll look at the horoscope of Rahul Gandhi as well. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today. So here is the horoscope for today. So I've set this chart for noon, New York, which is June the 7th. And at noon, New York, you can see that the moon is at 1 degree 52 minutes Cancer. So today the moon is going into Cancer. And to be precise, the moon goes into Cancer at 1:41 p.m. in London. So in terms of New York, that is going to be 8:41 a.m. So in New York, moon goes into Cancer in the morning. If you're in, Los Angeles, the West Coast, then that will go in even earlier. So that will go sort of 5:41 a.m. So basically, from an American perspective, you can regard today as being a sort of moon in Cancer day. If you're in Europe, perhaps Africa, it's sort of last half of the day is moon in Cancer. If you're in Australia, New Zealand, East Asia, then it's really not going to be until this evening, perhaps even late this evening, that the moon goes into Cancer. So it is a day of transition. Though probably the main aspect happening at the moment is the sun is sesquiquadrating Pluto. So there is Sun at 1723 Gemini, and it is 135 degrees off from Pluto. So if you've got Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto, you'd expect a certain sense of a power struggle. People are very concerned about how they're asserting themselves and whether they're asserting themselves and whether people are trying to overwhelm them. Who is in control? And that is a big question with this Sun-Pluto aspect that many of us may be asking. And I suppose in certain situations we may feel that we just cannot assert ourselves, that it's best to do nothing or to hide our light under a bushel because it just seems a bit scary, the world out there. So depends to an extent who we are. I mean, if we're already a sort of power-hungry person, we enjoy controlling, then I think the Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto may just encourage us. Though I suppose if we think about it, Sun in Gemini, sesquiquadrate Pluto, the Sun in Gemini can scatter itself a bit. So if we want to be in control, if we want to assert ourselves, we've got to be very focused. And I suppose that is what Pluto is encouraging us to do. Now, going back to the moon, so there is this change, moon in Gemini transitioning to moon in Cancer. So with that transition, it may be that there's going to be a little more sincerity, perhaps, because we've had all these planets in Gemini. That 5 planets in Gemini is just a bit overwhelming, isn't it? And okay, there might be variety, but it might be difficult to make up our mind, and we might see a lot of change. We're being absolutely sure we're going to do one thing, and then we end up doing something else. I don't know, perhaps we saw that recently with Nigel Farage. Maybe not necessarily because of the moon in Gemini, but with all those Gemini planets. Nigel Farage, who has no air in his chart, he was very sure he was not going to stand in the election, and he was going to help Trump with getting re-elected or getting a second term. But no, he changed his mind. He decided he was going to completely get involved in the British election, take over leadership of Reform UK. So things can change. But with the moon moving into Cancer, I think that provides a little more certainty and a little less confusion. But it's only the beginning, and we may not feel the full impact of the moon going into Cancer for a bit of time. Maybe not until tomorrow. Though, if you're in the Americas, I think it's going to be more of an event. From a heliocentric view, we can see that here it is. Here's today's astrology from a heliocentric perspective. I'm not sure how much there is to report. Notice that from a heliocentric point of view, Jupiter has gone into Gemini. Now, we know that Jupiter's already gone into Gemini, but Jupiter heliocentrically is not quite in quite the same place as Jupiter geocentrically. I don't know if it really means much for Jupiter to go into change sign heliocentrically, but when it changes sign, when it moves into Gemini, that means it's really starting to make that trine to Pluto. So that emphasizes the fact that it's still very much a Jupiter trine Pluto time for many of us. We're considering ways in which we can improve our condition, make things better. Yeah, self-improvement really is going to be important, and that, I think, is something that many of us should try to focus on. So if you're not happy with the way things are, then consider ways in which you can actually change it. And as far as other things are concerned, I think that the Earth, Venus, Saturn T-square is starting to break up. So there's the Earth opposition Venus. So remember, Earth opposition Venus is the same effectively as Sun conjunct Venus. So there's Earth opposition Venus, and Earth and Venus are moving away from Saturn. They are actually starting to move towards a square with Mars. So that is beginning, and you might sort of notice that Mars, Saturn are 12 degrees apart. So 6. Yeah, the problem here is that Earth and Venus are, they're starting to make a square to the Mars-Saturn midpoint. In fact, Venus is square the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and that might be a cause for concern. There's just going to be a feeling that things aren't as they should be, and relationships may, in some quarters, continue to disappoint. So I think, in a general sense, don't have too many expectations of other people, and it may be just that certain people out there are worrying about things. So really, that is all something that needs to be considered. Though I should say that the heliocentric picture is not especially dramatic. So what I want to do now is do the astrology for the 12 signs. So yesterday was a mess, so I didn't do anything for the 12 signs. So I hope you survived Thursday. And let me now switch to a geocentric position so I can look at the 12 signs. So we're back to the geocentric position for today, which is Friday, June 7th, 2024. And here are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, for Friday. Aries. Aries, I think that you do perhaps need to start settling down. I know that you've got a lot of things running through your mind, and there are things you want to say, but I think the time for saying them may actually be close to the end. You know, you've said your bit. I think that people have, by and large, understood you, and you probably don't have to repeat yourself. And so maybe it's a day for wrapping things up, for just making sure that everyone has understood. So it's not about repeating the message. Sorry, let me say that again. It's not about saying the message, so it's giving out a new message. If you give out a new message today, I don't think it's going to have much of an impact. It's rather making sure that everyone has understood what you're trying to say. And if you can do that, then I think that is probably enough. And as the day progresses, Aries, it's time to start, it's time to wind down and to make sure that you are comfortable and perhaps to look after your own interests. That could have been something that recently you've been forgetting. You've been thinking about, what's been happening in the world. There's been a lot of excitement in the world and a lot of things to sort out, a lot of things to worry about. And the question is, where have you been? And now you have a chance to really, I think, settle down and have serious thoughts. I mean, there is a seriousness there, but your thoughts need to be about yourself and what you are achieving and what you're not achieving, and who's helping you and who's not. And if you look at things from a distance, it will become clear that some people are useful for sure, but other people, you've tried your hardest to get on with them, and really they haven't been helpful. And so maybe certain aspects of your social life and your circle of friends and associates need to be reconfigured a bit. And yes, some people, may have had their day, and it's perhaps time to move on. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, I don't think that you need to focus too much on any one particular relationship. I don't think that is at all compulsory, though you might find that certain people are rather thoughtful, and whatever they're saying on the outside, they may have their doubts deep down about something, and if possible, it would be a good idea to understand these doubts. Now, you don't have to be super assertive about it, demand that people are honest and, get oversensitive about it, but just consider the possibility that even if people are agreeing with you, that there is still something bothering them, and if you get a chance to discuss it, that would be good. Taurus. Things are perhaps getting a bit better. I think one problem that Taurus has had recently is that there have been things going on outside your control, which have nonetheless been having an influence on you, and they might have prevented you from seeing the wood, seeing the wood for the trees. You just haven't been clear. It may be, for example, that family members have taken up a lot of your time. Things going on in your home have taken up a lot of your time. Not just taken up a lot of your time, but been a distraction. And you haven't been able to fully understand what was going on. And there may have been a financial aspect to that. Things happening financially which you didn't understand, and you're now starting to get it. And the reason you're starting to get it is because Venus is starting to move away from the Sun. So that blinding influence is not quite as strong as it used to be. And you're able to have a better understanding of what is going on. And I think that you're going to benefit from the moon moving into Cancer. And today the moon is moving into Cancer. As I said at the beginning, the introduction to the astrological situation, the moon is leaving Gemini, entering Cancer. And so the moon is quite strong in Cancer. Moon rules Cancer. And so as the day progresses, you're going to feel, I think, a greater sense of comfort and also a greater ability to articulate your feelings. Because, we've had this huge build-up in Gemini. We had the moon in Gemini, and I think that might have been somewhat overwhelming. As I mentioned in the last video that I've got Taurus rising, so if I'm looking at these forecasts from a Taurus perspective, then things might not have been great because I didn't do the video, a full video for the signs yesterday, and that was because there was a Sun-Venus conjunction. Maybe I'm just projecting my own material onto you, but still, that Sun-Venus conjunction is breaking up, and I think you're going to be able to see things in a better light, and I think you're going to be more objective, and you should not forget your immediate surroundings. Things happening in your immediate surroundings are going to have an impact, and you need to know what's going on. And over the next day or two, it might be a good idea to look at what your neighbours are doing. We often forget about neighbours. One can sort of inhabit sort of a life that is completely blocked out by brick walls and boundaries, but neighbours do matter, and it's not just in terms of homes and where you live. It can be about people you meet all the time but don't talk to. So you can actually be a reassuring force. And people you don't know or hardly know can find you reassuring over the next day or two. So do consider that, and consider what impact you might be able to have, and consider the possibility that it might be a favourable impact. Though not everyone is worth bothering with, because Mars is ruler of Scorpio, your opposite sign, and Mars is conjunct the Mercury-Saturn midpoint. So if Mars is conjunct the Mercury-Saturn midpoint, you may find that certain people are quite harsh, and the things they say might be a little bit offensive. I mean, that's one possibility. It's also possible, Taurus, that some people are moving away from you. Some people, for one reason or another, don't feel they need you in their lives anymore. I know that doesn't sound very nice, but if that's the case, then perhaps you should try to work out what's been happening and why that might be the case, and you certainly shouldn't be offended by it. Most relationships are temporary. I suppose in life, one meets people like ships in a night, and then one moves on, and that is quite natural. Gemini, there has been this huge build-up in Gemini with all these planets. I think we had 5 planets in Gemini at one stage, and that sounds good, but it might have been a bit overwhelming. You might have felt that there was just a lot of focus on you, and you felt perhaps that there was certain pressure to be someone, that you had to do things. It was all on you. And now that the moon is moving out of Gemini, things could be a bit easier. Less pressure. You don't have to constantly be thinking about what's supposed to happen next. And I think that you're also going to have a certain sense of objectivity that was missing over the last couple of days. Objectivity is very important for Geminis. Geminis need to understand what the different views are, and they also need to understand if they're making mistakes. And when there's no objectivity, when you can't get an alternative view, it can be really difficult. So with the moon moving into Cancer, you get a perspective, and you also get a certain sense of what is actually possible. And possibility can actually have a financial dimension. Things cost money, and so with moon in Cancer, you're very aware of that. Though I think financially, moon in Cancer is probably quite fortunate, because moon works very well in Cancer, and it means that you'll have a good sense of the value of things, not just the cost of things, but the value of things. And it will be relatively straightforward to understand whether something is needed, and certain things are not needed, and certain things do not have to be bought. And so that's good that the moon is in Cancer, allowing you to also put some aspects of your finances on more solid footing. Moon in Cancer, as I said, it's a great place for the moon. So that's something I think that is welcome, and it does put less pressure on you. Now, Gemini, don't underestimate yourself. There's still a lot of stuff going on in your sign. And if you want, Gemini, you can still have a very powerful impact. And one reason for that is that the sun is making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto. So that sun sesquiquadrate Pluto, that's a 135-degree aspect, 3/8 of the circle, gives you a great deal of power. You can make things happen. People are going to really listen to you if you want. And that also gives you responsibility. Geminis have ideas, and Geminis have all sorts of ideas. And some of these ideas are brilliant, other ideas are just complete garbage. But whatever the idea is, I think actually you're going to be very good at articulating it. And so what would happen if you were to articulate an idea that is fundamentally flawed? It's actually quite possible that people will listen to you, and they might even believe you. Geminis can be very believable when they want to be. So you do need a certain sense of responsibility. Just because you've got power just because you can make things happen, just because you can persuade people that you are right, does not necessarily mean that you should exercise that power. And if you are telling people 100% that this is the way it is, yeah, they'll believe you, I think. But what if you're wrong? So Gemini, I think it might be a good idea today to check your facts. Cancer. The moon is moving from Gemini to Cancer. And so what today is like may, to an extent, depend on your location. So if you are, for example, in Australia, New Zealand, then essentially the moon is going to be in Gemini all day. So if you're in Australia, New Zealand, and perhaps East Asia, then it's a day when you are, I think, going to be quite assertive. You're going to have things you want to say. People are going to listen to you, and you are able, you're going to be able to have an impact, especially in terms of your social life. And so if you're in Europe, that's more about the first part of the day. And if you're in America, that's not really about what today is about. Because the moon is moving into Cancer. And so, I said, America, moon is in Cancer all day long. Europe, it's sort of half and half. Australia, New Zealand, moon in Cancer is more about tomorrow. So, focusing on America, I can say the moon is moving into your sign. And moon moving into your sign is really a bit of a relief. It's, you've had a big build up in Gemini, and it didn't feel entirely comfortable. And now that the moon is moving into Cancer, you feel a great sense of relief, I think, that finally you understand what's happening, and you get a sense emotionally that you're not quite so alienated, and it's kind of going to be better. You're going to find it easier to express yourself in a natural way. And I remember, if you're in Western Europe, that's more about what happens late in the day, and Australia, New Zealand, that's more about really perhaps tomorrow. But going back to America and perhaps Western Europe, with the moon moving into Cancer, you're just feeling that you are just comfortable, and that really there isn't much pressure to do anything, and you can be a reassuring influence. People like reassurance. Some people, actually, Cancer, are very uncertain about things. They don't know what's happening. They are confused, and they need some support. And I think, Cancer, you are in a good position to provide that support. And really, Cancer, that is pretty much it. There's not a great deal going on today aside from that sign change. So to conclude, Cancer, it does depend on where you are. I think if you're in Australia, you could have a very different, Australia or New Zealand, you could have a very different experience than if you're in the Americas. So do bear that in mind. If you're in Europe, it is a bit of a halfway day. In the morning, it's all about moon in Gemini. Late in the day, it's all about moon in Cancer. So it's a bit difficult to be absolutely precise. Though one thing that you all share, regardless of where you are, you all are going to feel this Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto. And in terms of the Cancerian experience of Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto, it's about something really quite deep, and it's about power, but it's where power comes from and what the source of your power is. And regardless of where the moon is, the real source of your power is not out there in the outside world. It's not with other people. It's not to do with your social connection. It's about who you are, and it's about the past. And you can reach down, link with the past. There's something from the past that I think you need to really put your finger on without getting obsessed about it. You mustn't get obsessed with the past. You just need to accept the past and be logical about the past. But something happening a long time ago does give you the key to what happens in the future, and that's something you need to work out on your own. And it's quite intense. It's quite powerful, and really it doesn't have to be discussed except in terms of your own head. So there could actually be a conversation happening today, but that conversation is really with yourself. Now, I talked about, by the way, internal conversations. I was reading, there was this news story that's saying that something like 10% of people do not have internal conversations, which I found really surprising. So I'm talking about an internal conversation, but I think it's going to be very important. But I have to say that apparently 10% of people don't have internal conversations. I do find that surprising. So I'm not quite sure what would happen if you're one of those 10% of people who do not have internal conversations. But it's about really understanding something logically inside your own head, and that does link to what you can achieve and your ability to control your external environment. So I think it is a bit complicated, and different Cancerians are going to experience it in different ways, but I think at some level all Cancerians are going to feel this Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto. Leo. So I was just talking to Cancerians, and I was mentioning the fact that there was a Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto, and it's exact today. And of course, the sun is your ruler. So, as the sun is your ruler, this sesquiquadrate between the sun and Pluto, it is likely to have an impact on you. You're going to have, I think, a great sense of your own power. It'll occur to you that there really are things that you can achieve. So, Leo, it's going to be very important that you do not doubt yourself, and also that you have a good understanding of the source of your own power. Now, in many respects, the source of your own power may be other people in a way. It's your connections. So you think, we have this idea that if you want to be powerful, you need to be independent. But if you're completely independent, you're actually cut off from the source of your strength. So do consider the various relationships you're involved in and the power dynamic. And it's tempting to feel that it's either or. So in terms of any relationship, it's either one person is in control or the other person is in control. But I think that with this Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto, it can switch from one thing to another. And there could be moments where you have to listen, where you have to just accept that another person knows what they're talking about, and you don't have all the answers. Then there are going to be other moments where things shift, where you're the one who is in control, who has the knowledge, who has the strength. And so there's going to be shifting back and forth. And I think it's through that shifting back and forth that you actually will get a sense of your own strength and what you can achieve, because I think effective power is about knowing your own limits. And I think that with the Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto, you will get an insight into what your limits are. Now, Leo, you have to, you do need to know when to stop. Yes, it's true that you can really make things happen. I mean, there's little doubt about that. But there comes a point when you may no longer be being useful. So you can make things happen up to a point, but if you take things too far, you're getting fewer and fewer benefits. So it really is important to know when to stop. And in terms of your social life, it's important to you. Other people do matter. But I think there's a certain sense in which you may feel that you need to start withdrawing. You've said your bit, and there's a question. Are people listening to you anymore? Indeed, are you listening to them anymore? And that's going to be a change that takes place over the course of the day. I think if you're in the Americas, it's going to happen quite early. Even like as you get out of bed, you realize, hold on, there are a lot of people out there that you don't need so much. You certainly don't need them today. If you're in Europe, the day starts off quite normally, but by lunchtime you may just be done. You just may feel that you've done what you need to do, and that's it. Now, if you're in Australia, I think it's a slightly different picture. I don't think you're going to feel that today is a great changeover day, except perhaps in the evening. But so Australians are probably today, Australian Leos are probably going to be more extroverted, for example, than Leos in California. But it's all to do with the moon and the fact that the moon changes sign today, and it does change sign at different times. It changes. If it goes into Cancer, which is quite an introspective sign from a Leo perspective, and does go into Cancer in the morning, early morning in the Americas, but it doesn't go into Cancer until this evening, even late this evening in Australia. So it does depend a bit on the moon. Virgo, you are in quite a good position, I think, in the sense that you do have a strong sense of what you can do and how you can assert yourself and assert your power. I think that power is going to be important. Power is actually going to be quite important for a lot of people, and not just Virgos. But what I'm looking at today right now, is I'm looking at a sesquiquadrate between the Sun and Pluto. So the Sun, remember, is moving through Gemini. In fact, the Sun is now past the halfway period in Gemini. It's down at 1723. Sign said, it's only a couple of weeks left before we move into Cancer. But with the Sun in Gemini, you have a great sense of what needs to be done. You're not going to rest on your laurels. You believe that there's plenty that could be achieved if you give yourself a chance. And with that Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto, you may feel a certain sense of urgency, that you need to be in control right now. Even though it's Friday, it's the end of a week, people should be winding down, but I'm not entirely convinced that Virgo is winding down. And you may feel that it's the person who controls the paperwork and the bureaucracy is the one who is in real control. And from an administrative perspective, I think that Virgos do seem to know what's going on, and they do seem to understand smaller details that other people are missing, and that does give you authority. People might want to do things, but you can say, no, you can't do that because this particular detail hasn't been properly addressed. And so that could really help you take control, especially if you are working or involved in some kind of business, because you've got the facts at your fingertips. But we don't want to go too far in terms of being in control. There is a time when you can just start to relax a bit, and that is, because the moon is moving out of Gemini into Cancer. We've just had this new moon, and I think that this new moon did put the focus on you and what your ambitions are and what you want to achieve. And don't forget, definition of a new moon is the sun and the moon both being in the same sign, and in this case it was the sun and moon both being in Gemini. But the moon is now leaving Gemini, moving into Cancer, and I think that takes the pressure off, and it's kind of convenient that it's happening as we move into the weekend. So over the weekend the moon is going to be in Cancer, and I think, Virgo, that does give you an opportunity to perhaps relax more, and also to just consider alternative views. In the recent past, it might have been difficult to look at alternative views, and now you can get a feel for what other people are thinking and saying. Just getting a feel. You don't have to absolutely understand what's going on, but you don't have to say as much as you were saying, and you can just listen rather than feeling that you have to be constantly talking. And so I think in many respects, Virgo, it's a time when you can start winding down a little. Libra, you may be feeling a little bit sorry for yourself for some reason. I don't want to over-dramatize it. I think that you may feel, Libra, that there's something that you can't entirely express. Maybe you just don't feel it's the right time. But then you could say, when is the right time? So if you are holding something back, Libra, then maybe you need to think again. Things should be becoming easier, because what's happened, Libra, is that we had this Sun conjunct Venus. Remember, a couple of days ago I was talking about this Cazimi Sun-Venus conjunction, and there is this argument about whether or not it's a good thing for Sun, and when Sun and Venus are exactly together, forming this exact conjunction. And theoretically, there is an argument to say it is a good thing, because Cazimi conjunctions are supposed to be fortunate. But in terms of other people, what I've been picking up on over the last day is that, or more than a day or two, is that this Cazimi conjunction between Sun and Venus, I get the impression it hasn't been working out. And I think that we may be overstating the importance of the Cazimi effect, that maybe the Cazimi effect, dare I say it, doesn't work, but actually an exact Sun-Venus conjunction is simply bad. And so with this Sun-Venus conjunction over the last day or two, it may have been quite exhausting. And now Venus is slowly starting to move away from the Sun, and you're getting a little more objectivity. So yes, I understand that you may feel that some things just are not or haven't been working out for you, that you haven't been able to express yourself. But things are now changing. There is a growing gap between the Sun and Venus, and that does allow you to express yourself, to articulate your feelings, and also to understand what is going on. The clutter is being cleared. And that clutter, it could actually be about some other people, whether it's your friends or your family. They've been demanding your attention to the extent where you haven't really understood what's going on. But don't worry, you are understanding what's going on increasingly. And I think that things should be actually getting easier for you. And you're having a greater sense of self and responsibility to yourself. And the moon is moving out of Gemini and it's moving into Cancer. Now, I do think that that is important, and I think that may be particularly important for the weekend. You know, if we talk about today what it means for the moon to move out of Gemini into Cancer, well, there is this complication that it does depend on where you are. But if you're in the Americas, you will be feeling the moon moving into Cancer pretty much all day. And I think that you're going to have a strong sense of what you're supposed to be doing. And you are actually able to tune into some of your ambitions. You have things you want. Now, it's not going to be immediately clear how you're going to get what you want. But it's more about having the thought. You'll know what you want, you'll know what you don't want, you'll have a certain sense of how you can assert yourself and how you can persuade people to give you what you want. But at the moment, it may be more about the concept. But over the weekend, everyone, regardless of their time zone, every Libra, regardless of their time zone, is going to feel the impact of that moon in Cancer. So I'm thinking particularly on Saturday, you'll be able to take advantage of what it's offering. You know, when the moon is strongly when the moon is strongly and definitely in Cancer, and you won't be disturbed, you won't be distracted, and you'll just be able to tune into what's important to you and how you want to articulate your needs. Scorpio, you are feeling that there are things going on that you don't really want to engage with. There's a certain distance there. You can see there is a lot of action out there, but I don't think really you want to engage with it. It's almost like you don't trust yourself to engage with it. You think that if you were to really put yourself out, be with people, try to make an impact, you don't really know how you'd behave. And at the same time, you might be concerned about what you might say. And I think that could be quite a legitimate concern, because at the moment, Scorpios are potentially quite cutting. And that is because Mars, which is your ruler, is conjunct the Mercury-Saturn midpoint. So Mercury-Saturn as a pair is about communicating in a way that is quite harsh. That's one approach. Or it just could be about not feeling you can communicate. So it kind of depends. But communication is not easy. And if you do say something, the words may not come out right, and without meaning to, you might cause offence. Or I say without meaning to, I suppose if we're talking about Scorpios, there is a certain sense of psychological determinism that what's happening in one's unconscious mind is having an impact on you. It's having an impact on your behavior. And so maybe at an unconscious level, for example, you may have decided that you just don't want someone in your life. You absolutely do not want someone in your life, but you're trying to be polite. And yet, unconsciously, that thought imposes itself. And without meaning to, you say something that is really offensive. Because at an unconscious level, you know exactly what you're doing. And so be honest with yourself, Scorpio, about your likes and dislikes. If you don't like someone, and you're supposed to like them, just be honest about it and act accordingly. If you're not honest about it and you pretend that things are okay when they're not okay, then you could get yourself into trouble. Though over the next day or two, Scorpio, I think that you need to perhaps de-emphasize some of the intensity of your own feelings. I think it is an intense time for many Scorpios, and you need some fresh air. I think you're really beginning to feel that. Okay, maybe fresh air, or should I say clear water? I suppose Scorpio is a water sign. Just whether it's air or water, you need to get a sense of space. And I think that is becoming increasingly important, especially as the moon is getting ready to move into Cancer. Indeed, if you're in the Americas, it is moving into Cancer. So it does, well, in fact, in Europe, it's moving into, it is moving into Cancer. It just depends where you are. It's just that if you're in Australia and New Zealand and East Asia, you won't get the moon moving into Cancer until late tonight. So wherever you are, just that clear water or that fresh air is going to be important, because it's like the garbage needs to be cleared out. It's like a garbage disposal unit that can't deal with a lot of the garbage, and it's getting a bit clogged. Clear that out, and then I think you'll be able to swim and breathe, and you'll be able to be yourself, and that's got to be a good thing, hasn't it? Sagittarius, you have some rather interesting ways of looking at the world, and you're not seeing the world potentially as other people see it. You have a rather unique approach, and that's fine. But you do have to understand that your approach may not necessarily be in accord with other people's standards and expectations. So, Sagittarius, it may be that you find yourself just thinking about bad things that could be going on. I mean, I don't think that you're going to be too bothered about it, but I just think you're going to be seeing some of the badness out there, and the capacity for action to have really bad consequences. And so if something happens, which in itself seems neutral, no one seems to be bothered by it, but you respond in a different way to events from other people. So if an event happens and everyone is kind of optimistic about it and they say, oh, that's interesting, that's good, you might saying, no, this is not good at all. And if you were to express your doubts, you might get a negative reaction. But you have to be honest with yourself, I suppose. You understand, Sagittarius, that everything has consequences, even events which seem boring. And today, when you look at what's happening around you, and I'm not talking necessarily about your own life. In fact, I'm probably not talking about your own life. It just what's happening in society, what's happening in your community. When events happen, you can really start to understand where they can lead, and just instinctively, intuitively, you know that they're not leading anywhere good, and that might put you in a Cassandra position. So just remember, Cassandra is what she was, the Trojan prophetess. She knew everything. She got everything right, but she had the curse that no one would believe her. So I think there is going to be a certain Cassandra feel to Sagittarians today, and I think that Cassandra feel is going to become more intense as the day progresses. You're going to start to see things the way they are, and it's something quite intuitive. And it's also the fact that, you know, the moon is moving into Cancer, so the moon, Cancer from a Sagittarian perspective is quite a deep, quite emotional sign, looking at things below the surface, you know, very different from moon in Gemini. And that's something you can do. Okay, it's not a typically Sagittarian thing. One doesn't normally associate Sagittarians with going deep down and getting heavily emotional and getting into negative states of mind. But today, I think that could be a feature of what's going on. By the way, when I say negative states of mind, I'm not talking about depression or anything. I'm not even talking. I suppose I shouldn't really have said negative states of mind. It's more about a negative view of what is happening around you. But for negative, I think we read realistic. And if you get a strong feeling that the world is going in the wrong place, then I think you're right, though don't expect other people to believe you. Capricorn, you may feel a certain sense of relief, or at least a sense that you're coming to the end of something. That, you know, something has been a bit difficult. You've been trying to work something out, and it hasn't entirely been smooth. It's just been difficult, and fortunately, you're making headway now. It's clear that you are making progress, and what used to be a complete mess is now starting to be in order. And I think that is going to make things a lot easier for you. And also, I think you're going to be better able to deal with other people. I think over the last day or two, you may have had a certain reluctance to engage with other people. Perhaps you felt that they were just confusing, or just giving you too much information. You know, it's all that stuff in Gemini. You know, the average Capricorn likes to keep things simple and likes people to talk about one thing at once. They don't want to hear people talking about several different things at once and just being themselves totally confused and totally misleading. You want things to be straightforward. And Capricorn, I think that you benefit from two things. Firstly, things are becoming straightforward. And secondly, you have a greater tolerance for chaos and disruption. I think that over the last couple of days, you may not have been particularly tolerant in terms of surprises. You hadn't wanted surprises. And so, yeah, a surprise was really the last thing you wanted. But now I think that you are more flexible. I think if things happen that you weren't expecting, you can deal with it. And in your own way, Capricorn, I think that you can create your own surprises. There's something you've been working on that perhaps other people don't fully understand. And it's a time when you can just make it happen. And people will not be ready for it, and that's good. because the more surprised other people are, the less warning they have, the greater the impact. And it just may be that by presenting something suddenly, then you can gain the advantage. Finally, I should say something about relationships. The moon is moving from Gemini to Cancer, and so the moon has a special connection with relationships for Capricorns, because Cancer is your opposite sign. And so with the moon moving into Cancer, you're going to find that people are going to be more straightforward in general. They're going to be more down to earth, and they're going to be more sort of emotionally organized. I say emotionally organized. Sometimes emotions can be just chaotic and not in the right place. People show their emotions in inappropriate ways, and they mix their thoughts and their feelings, and it's all a big mess. But people are becoming more down to earth with the moon in Cancer, and I think it's in the Americas you're going to feel that first. Because you've got moon in Cancer all day long, and if you're in Australia or New Zealand, the moon doesn't move into Cancer until late this evening, so it does depend to an extent on your time zone. But overall, moon in Cancer should stabilize your various relationships. Aquarius, you are certainly able to deal with a high level of uncertainty at the moment, at least in terms of other people. I think that you deep down you do enjoy variety. Variety does matter to you, and if you're just dealing with the same old people in the same old way, well, that does become rather boring, and having new people is important to you. And even if these new people are behaving in an unpredictable, even dramatic way, still it's better for nothing, and it does provide you with some new interest. And so do perhaps be ready to do something that is different, and I think that will be greatly appreciated. Though it has to be, to an extent, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think that with all these planets in Gemini, you have had lots of ideas, many different ideas, I hope. This build-up has been going on since, May the 20th, 21st, so it's been going on for a few weeks, and there's a lot to take on board. And while you might enjoy some of the chaos, you do have to start to sort it all out a little bit. And I think that's what you can start to do. Really start to think it through, decide what new ideas are worth bothering with, and also consider the possibility that some ideas maybe are not for you at the moment. And so if you can just do a bit of organization there, particularly towards the end of the day, that would be very good. And this organization may actually continue through until Saturday. Now, one aspect that we do need to pay attention to is a sesquiquadrate between the Sun and Pluto. So the Sun rules Leo, which is your opposite sign, and it is sesquiquadrate Pluto. So that might suggest someone who is quite into power. There are people out there who can be very manipulative, and they can make you do things that you weren't actually planning on doing. Now, for an Aquarian, that sounds really quite a shocking idea. You are in control. That's important to you, but you're not in quite as much control as you think you are with that Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto. But it needn't be a problem provided you understand it. Because what you need to do, Aquarius, is you need to understand the emotional dynamics. You need to understand the way relationships are functioning at an emotional level. Because if you don't get the emotional side of things, if you don't see how emotions are working, then you are putting yourself in a very vulnerable position because, like it or not, you're an emotional animal. We're all emotional animals. And so if someone is pulling the emotional levers without you knowing what's going on, then you're asking for it. Then you could be seriously manipulated. But if you really are able to engage with the emotional side of things and you're able to consider how people are functioning emotionally, then you'll be in a better position to understand what's going on. And if anyone is trying to control you or manipulate you, however subtly, you'll then be able to recognize it. So try to be sensitive today. It may be difficult to begin with, but as the day progresses, I think as the moon starts to move into Cancer, I think you will become more sensitive and better aware of the way people are trying to get you to think things or do things which you didn't really want to do. So that's it, Aquarius. I don't think actually overall it's a particularly dramatic day, but the issue of power may be important with that Sun sesquiquadrate Pluto. Pisces, you have been in a mood where you haven't been entirely sure what was happening out there. And I think the reason for that, Pisces, is because you've been quite focused on yourself and on your family and the things that were of immediate importance to you, and you weren't thinking about what was happening out there. Perhaps you didn't feel that it really mattered. It was just your immediate interests that were of concern. But things are changing. I think that you're able to look beyond your immediate patch of the world, and you're able to start to see how things are working, and you may have a greater sense of self-confidence, a feeling that you can go out into the world and show people who you are and what you can do. And it's a slow process, but you can really start to get results, though you still have a sense of caution. And I think in some ways your caution is justified, because you are seeing things that maybe other people are not seeing. Maybe because you're a Pisces, because Pisces is a sign that tends to be quite emotionally aware, but it's just seeing those undercurrents that are moving things in a particular direction, and it's a direction that you are not entirely comfortable with. You can see that it might actually be a bad direction, and there might also be bad actors, and you can see them. There are bad actors, people that don't wish you or anyone else any good. I don't really want to personalize that, but you can pick up on that, and you might feel that you're just being paranoid, but really it's true. Though again, I must emphasize, it's not personal. It's not really about you or your friends or your family. It's more about what's going on out there in the world. And just you are more sensitive than other people. Well, it's not just you. When I was talking to Sagittarius, I was mentioning the same thing, that I was suggesting to Sagittarius that they may perhaps have a more suspicious view of the world from other people. And maybe you're the same thing. You don't just accept things as they are. You don't just accept people's motives as they are. It's very easy to think that everyone has good intentions, but you know that there are some people who don't have good intentions, and I think you might be in a position to perhaps give a warning. It's not just a warning to you, but it's a warning to the world out there, people you know, that we just really shouldn't take things at face value. But I don't want to sort of dwell on that point. It's just something that you need to just bear in mind. I think, in a general sense, the moon is moving out of Gemini into Cancer, and I think that movement of the moon into Cancer, remember Cancer is a water sign, and with the moon in Cancer, you're going to be able to relax more. You're not going to be quite so focused on security and feeling that everything has to be ship tight. No, that's not true. And I suppose you're in a situation where you understand for sure that there are things wrong with the world and that there are people who are up to no good. But at the same time, as a Pisces, that's always the case. It's always the way it's been. It's always the way it will be. And for your part, you can just lead your life in a sort of comfortable but alert state of mind. And I think that as the day progresses, as the moon starts to move from Gemini into Cancer, I think there'll be a great sense of what you can do and how you can be, creative. You can make things happen, and your imagination is going to be on really good form. Perhaps over the last couple of weeks, your imagination has been, you've been imaginative, but you've been wondering, has your imagination been moving in the same right direction? Maybe you've been imaginative in the wrong way. But now I think you're starting to be imaginative in the right way. You can imagine things that are possible. I think your powers of visualization are starting to be very good. And with these powers of visualization, you can actually start thinking about how you can bring these visualizations down to earth and enrich both your own life and also other people's lives through the exercise and manifestation of your powerful imagination. And that's it for the 12 signs. What I want to do now is look at today from the perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this video? So the first hexagram I got was hexagram 8, which is holding together. And it is telling us that, if we want to make progress, if we want to overcome whatever obstacles we're dealing with at the moment, we do need other people. We shouldn't feel that we have to do everything on our own. There are people out there who we can enlist their help, and I suppose that goes back to this idea, you either hang together or you hang separately. was it Benjamin Franklin? Benjamin Franklin who said that. So if we all try to engage with a problem separately, we'll end up hanging from the gallows. But if we come together, then we're all going to be okay. So cooperation is going to be really important. And we have to be very honest with ourselves. I think we can be honest with ourselves. So if we can't do something, then be honest about it. Say there's a problem. Because if we admit there's a problem, then we are likely to get a good response from out there. It's actually quite possible that there's someone else who has the same problem as us. Or what we might be talking about with this holding together is not just an individual issue, but an issue that we are facing along with others. It is about collective action. I was, talking about how I went to this. I attended a Zoom meeting, a council meeting in the city of Tumwater, which is close to sort of Olympia, to try to save this oak tree. And everyone, it was just lots of people making public comments. And I don't know, there were over 30 public comments. And I said my bit. I don't know, I talked to 3 minutes. You're only allowed 3 minutes. But it went on. And so that's the idea of people coming together to solve a collective problem. The city or the mayor wants to cut down a 400-year-old oak tree, and it was in immediate danger of getting cut down, but people got together and at least they got a reprieve. The oak tree, by the way, is not secure, it's not safe. It could be cut down very soon, but it's got a bit of time. There's time for a third party to have another look at it. Also, another thing about the oak tree is that someone noticed that they had film. I think there were 2 falcons nesting in the oak tree, and apparently it's illegal to cut down a tree where when you've got nesting birds in it, particularly falcons. So that was another dimension to the issue. So holding together to deal with a common problem, that's really important. So what is that common problem? Well, I know I shouldn't be talking about problems. I know there's a certain tendency in this I Ching to always talk about problems, but maybe it's about opportunities. So if there's an opportunity there and you want to take advantage of this opportunity, maybe on your own you're not going to be able to do it, but if you can get together with other people, there is a real chance that you can make progress and actually take advantage of whatever it is that's on offer. Now, it does seem, because the top line is moving, and there's a danger here. People are working together maybe to try to achieve something, but there's a danger that someone misses the moment. There is a moment for action. There is a moment for cooperation. There's a moment for people coming together at a particularly crucial time. And if you miss that moment, then you've lost it. Now, it may be that there's a disagreement. If people are holding together, they've got to agree with each other. But what if there's a disagreement? What if egos start to clash? Well, if egos start to clash, everything breaks apart. And we start to have the danger that we start to hang separately rather than hold together. So for our part, it's just important that we have a certain amount of humility, because if you want to hold together, you have got to, you've often got to give something up. It's not about individuals, it's about the collective. It's about the group, and it's about group ambitions. Now, I should say, when I say group, it does depend on your situation. It does depend on your circumstances. It may be the family. if you really feel that it's just you on your own and there's no one out there, then maybe holding together is about holding together, all of your different ideas, all of your different sub-personalities. And I don't mean that, I'm not talking about schizophrenia or anything. We all have different sub-personalities. So all those different sub-personalities, all those competing voices in our heads, and you've got to do this, you've got to do that, it's all got to come together. You've got to be unified. And perhaps with this hexagram holding together, it's just a reminder that we've had a lot of stuff in Gemini recently. So Gemini is all these different ideas, people going in different directions, ourselves going in different directions. And with holding together, we need to bring it all together and have sort of a unified purpose. And this hexagram holding together, it does move. It moves to hexagram 42, which is increase. Now, this is actually quite a fortunate hexagram. It's about gain. And this may indicate that our efforts to bring things together are actually working. Whatever we want more of, we're able to get more of. And so if we put in the effort, we will gain. Now, I don't know what that more of actually is. It may be more respect. It may be, I suppose, if you're worried about money, then there may be a chance to increase your financial resources. That is possible. But if you bring this together with, holding together followed by increase, it just shows that collective action, that bringing things together, not having separate agendas, can lead to real gain. And I think that this reading is particularly perhaps relevant if you're involved in any form of activism, but also if you're involved in any sort of group project. As I said, if you're on your own, a little more complicated, but then I think it's more about having unified purpose. That's really important. You can't have different and conflicting ideas. Then you're not going to achieve anything. And that's the I Ching. And what I want to do now is look at India. It's a really complicated subject, India, isn't it? I mean, it's such a huge country. I do have a fondness for India. I did go to India in the early 80s. I really liked India. In fact, I was there. We just had an election. I was there at the end of December 1984, just as they were. And I remember there was an election being prepared, and I saw these election boards going up in Delhi. And I think that was an election that came about because I was there. Indira Gandhi had been assassinated on October the 31st, and I was in India just after that happened. That was really, really dramatic. And so, yeah, I saw the election. I can remember people pressing election, not necessarily leaflets, but there was this, I remember I just given this plastic badge that someone wanted me to wear, which of course I refused to wear. And I think this badge was actually a badge for the BJP. It was a sort of plastic hand-like thing in BJP colours and with maybe a pin on it. But obviously I wasn't going to wear that. I'm a foreigner. I'm not part of their political system. But I do remember that. I think that was in Rajasthan just before the election. Okay, so I think the BJP did exist. I don't know how long the BJP has existed for. I think it existed in 1984, but I don't really know very much about Indian politics. So turning to the horoscope of India, I think that is a good starting point. So India got its independence at the stroke of midnight, freedom at midnight, on April the 15th, 1947. And here is the chart for India. Now, one thing about India is that traditionally, from a Ptolemaic perspective, India is a Capricorn. And I suppose you can see, in terms of Capricorn, I suppose you see the persistence of the Indian culture. It's a very old culture. Some things change. It's a very high-tech society, India, in many respects, but it's also very, very traditional. And the Indians are very proud, I think, of that tradition, that it just goes back for thousands of years. And some things change, but some things never change. And I think that is a theme one gets, perhaps, with that Capricorn. Now, in terms of freedom at midnight, August the 15th, 1947, when Britain gave India its independence, didn't really have much of a choice. It was pretty untenable, British rule after the Second World War. There are 5 planets in Leo. I mean, you've got all the planets. The planets are below the horizon, and in fact, this chart has a Kala Sarpa yoga. Now, Kala Sarpa yoga, I think that means in Sanskrit. I think that means the time of the snake. So what Kala Sarpa yoga is when you have all the planets on one side of the nodal axis. So there is a north node rising, there's a south node rising, and all of the planets are below the horizon. Or sorry, not below the horizon, on one side of the nodal axis. And there is some disagreement about whether Kala Sarpa yoga is good or bad. It seems that the Indian astrologers, I think that the Indian astrologers were concerned about the chart, about when India got its independence. Kala Sarpa yoga, if you have Kala Sarpa yoga, it's about, of course, something that is incredibly fated and very persistent. People with Kala Sarpa yoga are very stubborn. When they decide they're going to do something, they're just going to do it, and they don't really listen. And India is going to do things its way, and I think that I suppose one always says that something is very fated, because does it actually mean anything? But I think because of the Kala Sarpa yoga, I think that was a very powerful time at which India got its independence. Pakistan got its independence, I think, a couple of hours earlier, I think. So the charts of the two countries are not quite the same. Of course, independence happened in different places. But that Leo, it's an incredibly proud country. And Leo is a fixed sign. And it does like to do things its way. And the pride, I think that, I believe I looked at some statistic about what countries are actually proud of themselves. What countries regard themselves as being the best country in the world. Now, if you do polls in America, a lot of Americans think their country is the best country in the world. You go to England, I don't think many English people are going to say that their country is the best country in the world. But I think in India, if you ask people in India what's the best country in the world, they will indeed tell you that India is the best country in the world. There is a great national pride there, and that might be reflected in that Leo, but in that sun in Leo. But also there is an inflexibility, and all that Leo can be a problem. In terms of, for example, the economy. There's always, in India, there's been issues about how much control the government has over the economy, and Indians are, very entrepreneurial, and very, very good when it comes to sort of business. But at the same time, in India, there's always been, since independence, these stifling controls on what you can do. And there is an argument that sort of kept the country back. And there is a feeling that economically it's perhaps underperformed because it's been too rigid. And maybe that's what we're seeing with these, with all of those planets, with all of those planets in Leo. It's just very fixed, and it's not just these planets in Leo. We've also got Jupiter in Scorpio. So a lot of fixed planets. And again, the pride, I know that we can see pride in terms of Leo, but you can also see pride and nationalism in terms of the sign Cancer. And so you've got the Moon in Cancer and Mars in Cancer. And Mars is on the Aries point. Mars is square the Aries point. And Mars is about war. Don't forget, Pakistan was born at the same time, pretty much. So Mars also has Mars square the Aries point, and so it's not surprising that India and Pakistan have fought a lot of wars. I think they had a war pretty much as soon as they had independence. There was a war in Kashmir where Pakistan tried to, I believe, make a move on Kashmir, and I think that the Indians were able to get the situation under control. And then you've had a war in 1971, and when Bangladesh got its independence with India's help. And in fact, India and Pakistan are always at war. There's always some war in some glacier in the Himalayas where the India and Pakistan are fighting it out just all the time. We just don't hear about it. Plus, India's has a sort of ongoing war against China, and we don't call it like that, but there's often border incidents, and China took a chunk of India in 1962. So I think that Mars on the Aries point is just telling us a lot about India, and it is a very martial country. With its own nuclear weapons, it's got a lot of stuff. I suppose it's an embryo superpower, and I suppose that's always going to be the question: is India going to really become a superpower? Is it going to get itself together to become a superpower? Because obviously it's a huge country with the potential to be very powerful. Now, one group or family that has had a considerable influence over India is the Nehrus. And I just want to remind you, when you talk about the Nehrus, look at the Leo in India's chart. You've got 5 planets in Leo. So the first prime minister of India was Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru. I thought, I'm not going to spend long on his chart. So this is his horoscope, and I just wanted to point out that Nehru has Leo rising, and he has got the moon in Leo. So that Leo connection between India and its first prime minister does seem to be very strong. Now, Nehru, he had a daughter, Indira Gandhi. So she became prime minister, and she was a very long-lasting prime minister, and she was a pretty powerful woman. And here is her chart. So, like her father, she has Leo rising, and she has Saturn. She had Saturn in Leo, and that Saturn in Leo, if you look at, if you compare India's chart with Indira Gandhi's chart, we can see that India at stroke of midnight has its IC at 14 Leo, and Pluto on the IC. And so Indira Gandhi's Saturn is right on the country's IC, so she's really able to connect with the depths of what the country is. Of course, it's a Saturnine influence. She was a strong leader. In the mid-70s, she had a state of emergency, which she got a huge amount of criticism for, trying to really assert herself. She and her son Sanjay Gandhi, who I'll be talking about in a moment. Now, Indira Gandhi got assassinated. So she was assassinated on October the 31st. October the 31st, 1984. So looking at her natal chart, sorry, that's India's natal chart. Looking at Indira Gandhi's natal chart, she has got Uranus exactly on the 7th house cusp. And I think it was Simonite in the 19th century. I think it was Simonite, a 19th century astrologer, said that Uranus on the 7th house cusp was about death from the mob. Now, she wasn't killed by the mob. She was killed by her security guards. But so if you've got Uranus in the 7th and you're a politician, you are at risk. Louis XVI had Uranus on the 7th house cusp. He was obviously guillotined. So that's always dangerous. And so she was assassinated. That's her connection with India. Sorry. So she was assassinated. Just have a look at her assassination chart. October the 31st, 1984. Now, her IC was at 1745 Scorpio. So Saturn was at 1745 Scorpio. So Saturn, assuming her time of birth is correct, 11:11 p.m., Saturn was exactly on her IC when she was assassinated. And to an extent, that Saturn was picking up on her descendant, because she's got and her Uranus. So that's pretty accurate, pretty close. Now, she had two sons. I think she had other children. I'm not sure, but she certainly had two sons, and Sanjay and Rajiv. So Sanjay Gandhi was very much associated with what she was doing in the 70s. Sanjay Gandhi was a controversial figure, and of course a lot of people thought he was wonderful. And here is the chart horoscope of Sanjay Gandhi. And so Sanjay Gandhi had Saturn in Leo. So he was born close to his mother's Saturn return, Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And Sanjay Gandhi died in a plane crash in 1980. So on June the 23rd, 1980. So this is a chart for the plane crash. There was a Mars-Saturn conjunction, which was square Neptune, really very close. So, but that Mars-Saturn conjunction, square Neptune, in terms of what it was doing to Sanjay's chart. So, in a wheel, Sanjay Gandhi and his accident. So that's. So with Sanjay Gandhi, he had his sun at 21 Sagittarius. So Neptune was close to his sun, and again, this is just easy astrology. Mars, and there was that Mars-Saturn conjunction was squaring her sun, and Mars and Saturn were squaring his sun. Neptune was hitting his sun, so his sun was being really hit at the time of his death. Oh, and Jupiter. Oh, Jupiter was conjunct his moon. He had moon in the 8th. Just a reminder that Jupiter aspects are not necessarily fortunate. And then the other son, Rajiv Gandhi, I'm not going to spend a long time looking at his chart. So Rajiv Gandhi, on his mother's assassination, he became prime minister. I'm not sure how successful a prime minister he actually was. I don't think he quite had his mother's political instincts. But here's Rajiv Gandhi's chart, and yeah, he was assassinated. He, like his mother, was assassinated, and maybe he was assassinated in an incredibly public way. I mean, loads of other people were killed. I think were killed at the time. It was to do with the Tamil war in Sri Lanka and India not giving enough support. I don't know. Some of the Tamils got upset about it, and he was assassinated in southern India. And this woman just exploded a bomb. I think it was concealed in a wreath, wasn't it, or a garland of flowers. And so he's got Uranus on the midheaven. Okay, his mother had Uranus on the descendant, so he had Uranus on the midheaven. And that might make him vulnerable. And look how he's got, Moon square Uranus, Venus square Uranus. So that might have made him vulnerable. So Rajiv Gandhi had a son. He had other children, but I assume. But the son that I'm thinking about is Rahul Gandhi, and so Rahul Gandhi, he's still alive, but he has to be. He obviously needs to be careful, I would have thought, given the family tradition. Not family tradition, but there is something Kennedy-like about the Nehru dynasty. And so maybe people remember the past, but he certainly has to be careful. But so this is his chart, June the 19th, 1970, and yes, he is in Indian politics, and he has Jupiter rising. Now, I want to consider the election. So there was an election in India, and which we've just had the results from. And I do think that this election was really heralded by a new moon, by the full moon on May the 23rd. So this is the full moon for May the 23rd. Let me just reset it for New Delhi. So if you set it for New Delhi, you can see that new moon is exactly on the ascendant. So this, well, not exactly, but there was 6 degrees Sagittarius was rising, and you've got 2 degrees Sagittarius rising. Moon at 2 degrees Sagittarius, Sun at 2 degrees Gemini, and there is also a exact Venus conjunct Jupiter. Now, I think that Venus conjunct Jupiter is important if we look at India's chart. So going back to India's chart, India has 0 degrees 35 Gemini rising. So that Venus-Jupiter conjunction was exactly on the ascendant. Okay, different signs, but it was really hitting the ascendant. So this election, you could say, well, maybe this is a new beginning for India. This election, a new movement, and Jupiter is moving into Gemini. So Jupiter has just crossed India's ascendant. And so Jupiter's moved from Taurus into Gemini. So it's kind of not surprising that you've had an election where suddenly the governing party can't govern on its own. It needs alliances. It needs an alliance, and that's that switch from Taurus to Gemini, not just the one, but the many, or at least two. Gemini is a two-bodied sign, and so that seems to have does seem to have had a big impact, that new moon. By the way, I'm not going to look at his chart, but Nigel Farage, with that new moon, he has his Venus at 29 Taurus. So that new moon at 29 that full moon was really hitting his Venus. So that's when he had to make his decision about what he was going to do with his political career. Which brings me on to the subject of Narendra Modi, who is India's Prime Minister. So there are Indian astrologers who are quite absolutely sure that they know when he's born, but if you go to astro.com, several different times are produced. There's one is about, I think it's, for example, there's the earliest time that I could see there was this chart, which was set for 9:35, but there are a couple of other charts around about noon. So I'm going to look at the time for him set for 12:09 p.m. Now I might be wrong on this. I'm just warning you that there are several alternative charts for Narendra Modi, which is kind of surprising because in India they're really into the birth time and it's really important, but we don't know for sure. So I'm just warning you about that. Now we can still be pretty sure that he was born probably late morning, early afternoon. So when we see that his moon is at 2 degrees Sagittarius, that is probably a good sign that it is. He's got his moon in Sagittarius, 2 Sagittarius. I think we can be fairly confident about that. And going back to that full moon, so if we compare Modi's chart with the full moon, that full moon on May the 23rd was right on Modi's moon, and so that would indicate perhaps that this election was important and was perhaps about the ending of something. His certainly his period of absolute power, and I suppose it's likely that this is the beginning of the end as you move, a slow beginning of the end with this election. I mean, you don't need to be an astrologer you don't need to be an astrologer to say that. Now, as far as Modi's chart is concerned, I think we can perhaps get further evidence that he's running into trouble. So he has got a lot of planets in Virgo. So he's got Venus in Virgo, he's got Saturn in Virgo, he's got Sun-Saturn conjunction in Virgo, fairly close to the 10th house cusp. So let's just look at that chart in isolation. So okay, so there's Modi's chart. So okay, we don't know precisely when he's born, but let's say he has got his midheaven at 16 Virgo. That would really support the case. But he's got a Sun-Saturn conjunction. So if you've got a Sun-Saturn conjunction close to the midheaven, you can be a bit of an authoritarian. No doubt about that. And clearly he wants to be in control. He likes being in control, and he's done whatever he can to be in control, and he's got a lot of criticism for it. And with Virgo, I don't know, there's a certain lack of imagination about all of that. It's very specific about what he wants to do, and I think with Saturn now he's coming up to he's got Saturn problems coming up. So Saturn is what now it's about 18 Virgo. So Saturn is starting to slowly move towards this conjunction, his Sun Mercury Saturn conjunction, and he's got his South Node here as well. Now Saturn is about to go retrograde at about 1926 Pisces, so that's potentially on his IC, and then it will go retrograde, and then next year he's going to have Saturn opposition all of those Virgo planets, and I would guess that is going to be quite difficult for him. So I off the top of my head, I would have said that maybe to begin with, he'll cobble together some kind of coalition. There'll be an alliance, but probably by next year, when Saturn starts to really get going in late Virgo, he's going to start to feel the implications of that. And I think that, obviously he will try his hardest, I suppose, to stay in power, to keep control. But I think it may become increasingly difficult. So I think there's evidence here that as far as Narendra Modi is concerned, that things really aren't going to get any better for him. I want to finish by looking at Rahul Gandhi's chart from a Vedic perspective. He is. I know that his party is very small. I think he's still involved in Congress, but his party is a very small party at the moment. But he is a Nehru. People remember that. And so, I'm sure there are loads of other people vying for power, and he's just someone who has perhaps the highest profile. But I just wanted to just quickly look at Rahul Gandhi's chart from a Vedic perspective. I said I'm not going to spend long on it, but there are a few things to be worried about. This chart, by the way, is the Chandra Lagna chart. So this is the chart where you actually make the moon the ascendant. I probably shouldn't really have started with the Chandra Lagna chart. I should have started with the regular ascendant chart. But looking at this chart, if you set his moon as the ascendant, because he has the moon in sidereal Sagittarius. In fact, his moon in Sagittarius, both zodiacs. There's a Sun-Mars conjunction in his seventh house from the moon. And so that might make him vulnerable at some level. Maybe he hasn't hit this vulnerability yet, but I think that might be cause for concern. Now, turning to his main chart, where we just have the regular signs. So he has, from a Vedic point of view, he has Libra rising. In fact, he's Libra rising from a Western perspective as well. In fact, he's got Jupiter rising in the West. He has Saturn in the seventh house. Now, that Saturn in the seventh house is in Aries. That Saturn in Aries is poorly placed on the face of it. It's fallen in Aries, and that could be a problem. But it's a bit of a difficulty. Now, Nicola Sturgeon, she in her chart had, I believe, Saturn in Aries in the seventh house, and she was First Minister of Scotland. She was able to continue in power for a very long time, and that is because Saturn is Dick Barler. Nigel Farage also has Dick Barler. Saturn in the seventh house. Saturn has strength in the seventh house, and it doesn't matter to really whether it's fallen or not, it's still strong. So that would indicate that Rahul Gandhi is possibly quite a hard person to beat. He hangs around. He's probably not someone you'd want to take on, even though he might appear weak. particularly now when his party is so small. And are things really over for Congress, the Congress Party? I don't know, but we shouldn't perhaps underestimate him. But we still need to be concerned. Nicola Sturgeon, yes, she had Saturn in Aries in the 7th, but in the end she came unstuck. Now, as far as what his dashas at the moment, he's just moved into his Rahu major dasha. There is his Rahu and his Saturn minor dasha. So I think it all depends, doesn't it? We're going to be able to see how that Saturn really works. Is Dick Bala going to help that Saturn, or is the fact that because it's got directional strength, or is the fact that it's fallen going to make it difficult for him to really operate? I'm guessing that Rahul Gandhi is not going to perhaps achieve his full potential, or at least the potential that many of his supporters might think he has, because of that Saturn being in Aries. I mean, it's got to also be powerful enemies, and I'm just wondering how successful he is going to be. I'm going to look at Rahul Gandhi's chart again in another video, but for the moment, my immediate view is that certainly from now until 2027, he's going to perhaps find it difficult to make headway, and he always has to watch out for his enemies. After all, he is a Nehru, but maybe Saturn in Aries, not because it's in Aries, but because it has directional strength, as in the 7th house, will provide him with some protection. And of course, in the Western chart, he has Saturn in Aries. In the Western chart, he has Saturn in Libra rising. He's also got Saturn in Libra rising, and in his Eastern chart, and maybe that Jupiter will give him a bit of protection. So really, that's all I'm going to say about Indian politics. It's all a bit chaotic. I think that India probably has some quite considerable challenges ahead of itself. I think part of India's problem may be that it's got all those planets in Leo, and now it's going to have Pluto is about to move into Aquarius. And so Pluto, over the next, 10, 15 years or whatever, Pluto's going to be triggering those Leo planets. And so there's a sense in which India has to sort of let go of something. That Leo is just a little bit too fixed. It's a bit too focused on the past. And if it really wants to be a great power, something needs to shift. I don't think that Modi is the answer, and I think that with Pluto gathering strength in Aquarius over the next few years, then it's more than that. It's a decade and more. I think that India is going to have to change quite substantially, but that doesn't change the fact that it is a huge country, and I'm sure at some stage it will find its potential. After all, power is moving away from the West. Power is moving east, and it's not just about China, it's also about India, and I'm sure it will in the end manage. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I would be grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed and you enjoyed it, then I'd be really grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. And I will talk to you again very soon.